Hi, I'd like to introduce you to throwing larger pieces using 2 pieces of clay. So it's a good idea to do it on a bat. That way you can move the piece without disturbing it. I'm going to start with a 4-pound piece. Then I'll throw another and put them together. First pull, same as always. You're going to want to make sure that the walls are very even. So, do another pull. Relaxing about here to keep that wall even. I'm leaving the wall a little bit thick, because I'm going to finish pulling it after I get the second piece on here. So I'm going to rib off the extra water. Straighten the cylinder out. Thicken the top edge. This is important. Also, see how it's going out a little bit? It's a little wider on the outside and the inside edge. That'll give me some clay to blend together. And then this is still over 1/4 of an inch thick up here. Take all that extra water out of it. I think I'll straighten this up just a little bit more. What a nice cylinder. Now it's important that it's a cylinder, because when you put the second piece on here, the weight will go right down to the wheel head. If you bulge it out, you put something on there, it's going to put stress on that shoulder and it's going to want to collapse. This way, it's pretty solid up here. It's also thicker, so all the weight's going to be transferred right down to the wheel head when I add the second piece. Just clean off the slurry from the bat. Take this bat off. I have to measure. How do I know what size I need to make this? So, calipers, you could use a ruler. Now, I'm going to measure at where the wall is. You could measure to the outside edge. But remember, that wall is where all the weight's going to go. So that's about how wide I need to make the top of the second piece. Always dampen the bat a little bit first. The reason for that is that bat is porous. So when you go to lift up your piece, if this is dry, it sometimes will release. So if you dampen it, it'll make sure it adheres. It's a little smaller piece, it's about 3 pounds. Well, I've done it with 8, 10 pounds, so you can get a really large piece. Okay, I'm going to want the top to be this size. So the bottom should be at least as wide as the opening on the top of the first piece. Just spread it out a little bit. And this time, I'm going to open right down to the bat. So my finger's touching the wheel head now. I'm going to move my finger up a little bit and then make the floor of the pot. Now, I imagine you could go right down the bat and pull it out. Again, for the same reason as I dampen the bat, I want that suction to keep this clay on the bat. So I'm going to lift it up and leave a really thin layer of clay against the wheel head. So as you can see, there's a little hole there. You'll see what that's for in a minute. Now, remember, if it starts spreading out too much, always bring that outside edge in. And the way I did that is I just put my hand on the outside, my finger on the inside, and brought that top edge in. Makes it easier to lift, keeps it under control. Keep that lip nice and wide and under control. I'm going to do 2 pulls on this one too. It's still relatively thick, thicker than I'll have it in the final piece. And the rim is probably double the thickness of the width of the wall. I'm going to take the rib, get rid of some of this clay down here. You can use the point of the rib and take care of that way. Straighten up the cylinder. And measure. What do you know? It's about right. Double check. Pretty good. Take any excess water out of the bottom. Slip off the wheel. I'm not cutting it yet. What I am going to do is give it a little score. So I'm just going to take my serrated rib, my toothy rib, and scratch the top. Just break up the surface a little bit. Maybe even add a little water. Not much. Because remember, this is plastic clay. Take this one off. Put this one back on. Now, a good way to crosshatch, use the wheel. I'm just going to shake my rib back and forth. Get a good crosshatch. A little bit of water. Take this one, and this is the fun part. Flip it over. Put the two together. You can see why it's important to leave this one a little bit thicker. You take your wire, brace the bat with your chest, and pull the wire through the bottom. Okay. All of a sudden I've got a much taller cylinder. Why the hole? Let me show you. Just wet the hole, and you can cut that extra piece out. Now, when you do it, don't put those needle tools straight up and down, or that piece can fall in. If you go to a bit of an angle, it won't. I've used these for handles. Cut them in half, and you've got this kind of nice semicircle handle. Okay, so now you finish throwing the cylinder. I'm going to open it up so I can get my hand in it. Now this part, remember I spread the lip out, so I've got some extra clay here. Same thing on the inside. So what I'm going to do is sew it together. I'm just going to go up and down on both sides. Get that join really well joined. So my inside finger is going like this, my outside finger is going like this. Once you have that, take your rib, your finger again on the inside, opposite the rib, and I'm just going to hold it there, maybe go from the top down, and try to even that out a little bit. Just blending those two pieces together. You go from the top down, or the bottom up. But really work on that seam. I have never had one of these come apart. So now I'm going to continue throwing. So get a little water on it, thin this top out and straighten it out a little bit. Wall, and then throw down, get that seam really well bonded together. Now they're one. So I'm going to thin this out a little bit up here. undercut, and finish throwing your pot. I see a seam there, so I'm going to come back and compress it again with a rib on the outside. One on the inside, one on the outside. There. Do a little trim. do a little bit more trimming after the piece is leather hard. Create a little foot and call it a pot. So that's how you put two pieces wet on wet together and wire it off. Now I could just lift this off, but I think I'll just leave it on here for now. And that's how you throw a two-piece wet on wet vase. Now this is a small one. I could double the amount of clay I used for each piece, and all of a sudden I'd have one much larger. The limit to this is really the length of your arm to your armpit. So you can get, if you can get your hand right down to the bottom, you can throw one this size. And then of course you can continue adding pieces to this. But this is a way of centering smaller pieces of clay and assembling them into a much larger piece, and then being able to see them as a unified piece and to work it as a unified piece. Thank you.